Welcome to AmityCast. My name is Ellis.
And I'm Matthew.
And today we'll be talking about Spiral from the Book of Saw. This is going to be a bit of a shorter one. There's not as much to say. Last time we ranked an entire franchise, and a massive franchise at that, so this is going to be a bit shorter. Spoiler warning for the film. Any opening thoughts?
Where was the book?
There is no book.
Why is it called From the Book of Saw?
Okay, I don't know.
Should have been called Spiral Precinct.
I know critically it's been getting mixed reviews. A lot of fans have enjoyed it, which I think I'm probably in that
Camp?
in that minority, yeah, in that camp.
I like camping.
As do I.
Yep.
But it only released domestically, so it hasn't been as big of a box office smash as they were probably hoping. But I think they're gonna make a 10th film either way. I was impressed with a lot of minor things in Spiral. I definitely enjoyed the experience from beginning to end. Obviously, there's a few nitpicks, a few bigger problems in it, but overall, I enjoyed it. I know. What were your thoughts on it?
I enjoyed it. Did you?
I had just talked about how I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I haven't seen any of the other Saw films, parts of them, and I know what happens overall. But I enjoyed this more than I thought I would going into it. Thought a lot of the story elements were much better than what I've heard the previous Saw films have had, since probably part 3.
Yeah, it's a much stronger story, I think, with a stronger, cohesive message, I think, overall.
And it's surprisingly more relevant than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it was definitely really relevant. What I think is cool is that it had a really relevant message that I think they portrayed pretty well, and that maybe not handled the best, but I think it was overall a strong portrayal.
I do think if they had, I think...
But, what's cool about it is that... Sorry, I was just trying to finish that thought. Is that this was all filmed before the Black Lives Matter movement got a lot larger. So it's really cool to see how this was made before it was even super relevant. But it was still relevant at that time. It can still resonate to now. So
yeah, I think if Chris Rock wasn't involved in this film and it was just another random, African American actor, I think Chris Rock really added to this film a lot more. Samuel L. Jackson too, but he was not in it as much as you would think from the trailer and the marketing.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson
still had a really important role in the end, but
yeah, very important role, just not a very large one. Chris Rock, who has been subject to typecast in the recent years,
Adam Sandler comedy.
He definitely did a great job in this one, I think, with a dramatic role, at least compared to what we've seen from him before. You can see he was still trying to get into it, and I think he wants to get into more dramatic roles. And he's always been a Saw fan, so he pitched this story for this one.
Yeah, I never knew that. Has that always been known?
No, I didn't know that until I saw the marketing for it. Yeah, which I do think that he did a great job. I think he was doing pretty good at portraying the emotions that he should have at separate times throughout the film. Not every performance was great or convincing. Some of the other cops in the film were not fantastic. I liked the trap acting, because actors in traps really need to portray anguish and just absolute agony, and
when in reality there's nothing really happening.
That isn't actually happening to them. They're not actually pulling their fingers off and ripping out their tongue. So I think that overall the trap acting was pretty strong in this one.
I think the thing that helped that was because a lot of times you couldn't really see their face.
Right.
Yeah. With the tongue one, he literally couldn't act because he couldn't talk.
Right.
And the wax one was just muffled screaming while her face got melted up.
Yeah, that was that was definitely
unwinnable. Yeah,
that was an unwinnable trap. As we were talking about how the traps are one of the main is pretty much the main draw of the Saw franchise.
Well, how could the Samuel L. Jackson how could they have actually won that trap?
I don't know. That one didn't really make much sense to me.
I think it's if he didn't go after the guy and instead took all the things out of him.
Right.
But that didn't happen.
I mean, with the ending of the film, I think is strong, especially
ends really suddenly.
Yeah, it ends abruptly, which I expected, as it was only an hour and a half, and there was a lot of exposition going on. So I knew it was going to end pretty suddenly.
Don't a lot of them do that anyway?
Yeah, that does happen pretty often in the
Jigsaw
Saw
did.
films. Jigsaw for sure. But it's like, I think the ending, the message that they were trying to portray came together pretty well with that trap, but like the trap itself was portrayed weird, like shoot that or shoot me, like what's exactly going on here? But I think the character of was it Zeke Banks? Yeah, Chris Rock portrayed it pretty well. I think he has a strong arc throughout the film. As
I think probably the best scene was like when he was in the car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he was like breaking down.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
Surprisingly good.
It was shockingly good acting from Chris Rock. Not exceptional.
Am I right, Tommy?
But for Chris Rock, it was shockingly good. I really liked his arc throughout, and as you can see him slowly start to break down, and the more and more that like he just, after all these things keep happening, and like he feels more and more targeted, and like he starts to deteriorate more and more.
Yeah, there was one thing that like was like really awkward when you think about the film is like, why even have him be divorced? Because his wife and his kid are never involved in anything.
Right. There's that one scene with like
I can't see my kid.
a couple lines of dialogue, which is like, yeah, that seemed pretty irrelevant. But I think it was just maybe trying to add to the character. I don't know exactly, but I think it all.
Maybe if Chris Rock is in the next one, it'd be more of a plot point.
Yeah, possibly. I think if they do go forward with the 10th one.
Character to come back.
Yeah, I think
I like the dynamic between him and the actual killer of the film.
Right, I think that could actually be a really strong dynamic because, like, a spoiler warning again, but it was his partner who ended up being the Jigsaw copycat. It's a pretty predictable thing, but it was a pretty predictable twist overall. But yeah, like you said, the dynamic between Chris Rock's character and his partner were definitely, I liked it a lot more so than I normally do in Saw films. Sorry. I really enjoyed
Bet you did.
What? I overall enjoyed it as it went through with that part of the story and how the message kind of ties into it. You see Banks deteriorate throughout, and then that kind of like the entire film affects his decision at the end because he wants to shoot the guy, but at the same time he wants to save his father, and he agrees with him even more. And the guy's like, "You understand that these cops are dirty. You turned in a dirty cop," which was a big plot point.
And they still screwed you around.
Right, and he even explained how his own father was dirty in some ways for the police force, and it's like you can see a lot of that like conflict within Chris Rock's character, and I think was pretty strong. I think overall that was probably one of my favorite aspects of the film is that and like it feels a lot like a Saw film with like the directing choices because David Lynn Boseman returned, who did 2, 3, and 4, and it was cool to see how he matured as a director, but still like kept like those original tropes that he had in those films. But to see the stylistic choices and the overall narrative be very resonant of the Saw films, but at the same time feel like a fresh new story, it just shows how the concept can be very invigorating still to this day, and at the same time it can still be executed in ways that is a bit more dramatic than it may be portrayed. So
yeah, I can definitely see why, because Chris Rock did pitch this story, and he I believe he produced it, and also
he was an executive producer.
Yeah, you can definitely see how the studio like saw this pitch after Jigsaw, which I heard after that release they were going to do a 9th one, but like they never said what it was going to be.
Right.
And then eventually turned into this. You can see why the studio like really wanted to make it.
Right, I think there was a lot more involvement and a lot more care put into it. Jigsaw seemed like a bit more of like this is going to be another convoluted, crazy Saw film that's coming out. But
in some ways it was with the end with like, how he wasn't talking to his father and stuff.
Yeah.
And all this like meticulous planning and how every single cop is involved somewhat.
A bunch of that.
Like there was never like just like another good cop there.
Right, yeah. Which is like, I know like from a narrative perspective it's supposed to isolate Chris Rock's character.
Yeah.
But like it just seems weird. I will say about the villain, he's a really well written villain in my opinion, because the way to write an antagonist is one that you don't you can't agree with by understanding their motive. You still think that they're in the wrong and you still want to root against them, but at the same time like you can understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that was really on portray in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was really good reasoning for like why it's connected to, Jigsaw's, what he did, and the whole trap thing, the whole spiral thing. Very good lines of dialogue at the end where it's like, we have to go after these institutions, not just the individual.
Right, yeah, which is like a good parallel.
It's a good progression.
Yeah, it's a good progression is a great word. To tie it back into the Saw franchise and the Jigsaw character that really was the core of this whole thing, but to bring it into a more modern rendition and to really evolve the story, I think that that was well done. As a film, it could have handled some other things differently. I did like stylistically some of the cinematography, but the cinematography itself wasn't the most incredible. Like we said, outside of Chris Rock was probably my favorite performance. All the other acting was not quite
I like
there.
Sam Jackson's scenes, but he just wasn't in it enough.
Yeah, I don't think he was kind of just sprinkled in and like.
Come on, to eat, motherfucker. It's like one of his lines.
And his character was seen more as an important plot point than like the actual performance itself. So. Which, honestly, I'm fine with. I know Sam Jackson's old. I just can't believe
though how they got him to do this.
Yeah, I can't believe he was in a Saw film. Like what?
The 9th one.
Like what? That makes no sense to me at all. But then again, he's been in some weird movies that pretty much always seem like it's just for a paycheck. So
Captain Marvel.
Well, that's I agree with that. Absolutely. I will say that this is probably my 3rd or 4th favorite Saw film overall. I'm a fan of it. I know that it's got issues. That have been brought to light by some critics. But overall, I definitely enjoyed it. I think it's Saw and Saw 2 are probably the only ones that I would rank above it overall. I think as a film, it actually surprised me as better than I expected, even if it isn't fantastic or even good for that matter. I just think that overall, I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of horror fans can enjoy it as well. Like we said, the traps were good earlier. There's plenty of gore. That's what you want to see in Saw films. You love to see like gory stuff and stuff like that. So, yeah.
It was pretty good. What? What were you saying?
Just the gore is something that you always look forward to in Saw films, and
yeah, the gore was pretty well done.
It's definitely here. I like how it's not over the top. They didn't really go overbearing with it. It's like they had a few scenes with the traps.
The traps were actually like linked to each person.
Yeah, the traps were well linked to each person within.
I don't think Jigsaw's traps ever were like that.
No, I mean like a little bit, but like
I think
it had a bit more dissonance to it.
Wasn't there like a drug addict that had to do a needle trap or something?
Yeah, stuff like that. But here like directly tied to like the first cop like spreading lies or like using his tongues, then he gets his tongue ripped out. And then same thing with the guy with the fingers, how he used his hand to
get up and everything.
Right, yeah.
And then what was the girl? She lost her ability to talk.
It was like it was something.
Or her spine.
It was something to do with like use her position. So like her spine is kind of connected, like her whole body, kind of like her positioning to like move forward and stuff like that.
Sam Jackson's was like, what was it like? Like, well, he ended up getting shot by the police, which was kind of like.
Right, and I think that was a cool thing too. How it was a good example of the cops just immediately shooting, just like not
proving his point.
Right, proving the antagonist's point. He didn't say game over when the door was closing, which is a huge problem.
It's actually an elevator.
The door to the elevator. You gotta say game over in a Saw film, unless it's Jigsaw, I guess. But game over needs to be there. But there was no game over.
From what I've heard from a lot of fans, Jigsaw like is so like widely like not loved. Because after it was over, you didn't really want to see another one. But after this one, you're much more like willing to like sit through another one.
Right. I definitely like what they set up here, and I want to see more.
The puppet kind of sucked though. I mean, like I get the puppet's like meaning, Like, it doesn't really hit as well.
The meaning of the puppet is cool with the pig representing what Jigsaw's always believed in. The pigs meaning rebirth in like Chinese culture or whatever.
And this one, it's like the cops
mixed
and pigs.
Mixed with the cop and like how the cops are pigs and like how
the system is
how dirty the system and overall institution is.
And there's really well set up flashbacks because like while you kind of knew what was gonna happen, like each flashback kind of added more to like what was going on.
Right, with some of the later films and the first one of the Saw franchise, a lot of the flashbacks just seemed like it was trying to make it more convoluted just to be crazy. But here they actually felt like there was meaning to actually add to the storytelling and how the narrative set up. So
one thing that I've heard that I kind of don't get is like when they show the ending one where it's like Chris Rock sees like the killer as a child and he tells him to like be quiet. It's like why did he do that?
Yeah, I don't get that. That doesn't really make much sense. Maybe just to add to that dynamic, I guess, but...
And that's why he did it at the end, the killer.
Right, yeah.
Probably. Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they did a great job of setting up things and also knocking them down, like, as they go through, with, like, tying back to earlier parts of the film.
There wasn't, like, many callbacks to the other films. Like, there was that scene, like, they had, like, the billboard with, like, all, like, John Kramer's photos and stuff.
Right.
And, like, you see the killer look at it.
Yeah.
Which you didn't know at the time, but, like, most people did.
Right, like, if you predicted the killer, it's like, yeah. Which, I mean, is, like, I wish there would have been more, like, references back to the original. I would have loved to see a reverse bear trap. Like I said, I would have loved to see Game Over. The Saw theme is there, and it was well integrated into the final scene, I think. And that was really strong. But I like how you can go into this film and not having as much knowledge of all of the original Saw films. It really does sit well as a standalone Saw film. I know that you haven't seen any of the Saw films all the way through. This is the only one, so...
Yeah, it definitely got me a little bit interested in the rest. I know quite a bit what happens, just like from what I've heard from people. And, online, it's basically like you'll know that type of stuff. But I almost saw Jigsaw when it came out, but I didn't end up seeing it. But, like, I know what happened in it.
Right.
It definitely seemed like a lot of the later ones, they were just finding ways to, like, bring Jigsaw back, even if it was just, pointless flashbacks. Like, from what I remember, what I heard from Jigsaw, they literally just like, oh, he kidnapped his neighbor.
Right.
And it's just like, it's clearly time to move on or just stop. And this one definitely moves it forward in an interesting direction. And like everything about this film is like, it's not like professional, but it's like it's well done. It's competent. You can tell there's like passion behind the camera and on the screen. Because the director, I don't know what made him come back to this one. Right. Probably the story and like Chris Rock was involved and all that.
Yeah, I think Chris Rock really got him on board because he really liked his pitch, and he felt like it was a lot more of like what like the vision after 2, 3, and 4 was, because Saw 5.
Like wasn't it with it was Hoffman?
Yeah, Hoffman became like the main villain, but like I think the direction they took was not what like everybody involved really wanted. Like Saw, like the director for Saw 5 was like one of the editors on Saw 4. Like and then they had a different director on Saw 6 who was like one of like the choreographers on like.
I don't know why horror franchises do that all the time. Like they did that with like Halloween 6. They had a guy come in that hated Michael Myers. Yeah. And didn't like know what was going on in the storyline. They're like, hey, you just want to finish the storyline.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. It's great to see him return. He was the main one that really set Saw on the trajectory of what it was with 2, 3, and 4. He was also involved in the first film. But like I said earlier, 2, 3, and 4 was like really his start in the film business, and then it's great to see how he's matured, but also stuck to his stylistic roots with the directing in this film. I don't know much of his work outside of the Saw franchise, but I think overall it was strong. I don't think it's a great film. I know I've been praising it this entire time, but that's as like within the Saw like
it has its problems.
Universe. It does have its issues. Like
I don't know how rewatchable it is. Like I haven't really felt like seeing it again.
Some of the base like story writing is like okay, not
fairly bland. Pretty
meh. It does get bland at some points, and overall some scenes just kind of drag on a little bit, or they end too abruptly. There are a lot of issues with pacing. The pacing was not the best, as we said. Like it really ends like it's like a lot of build up and then sudden ending, which is never great for any film. And especially the acting, I think Chris Rock's performance was great. Outside of that, I don't really think anybody did good.
I think it would be significantly worse.
I really think he elevated the project. I know that he's been receiving some hate, but like I really think his performance is what brought it to the next level and made it a much better film than it could have been.
Yeah, and then I like all like the spiral imagery and how they explain it at the end, where it's like, you know, everything that happened before will spiral into the present in some ways, and you know, with this corruptness that started here with, you know, killing his father is going to spiral into something like this.
Right, and how it keeps going back together.
It's fairly, I don't know if I want to say smart, but it's very like clever.
I think it is clever use of symbolism, and I think overall, the symbolic parts of the film, I think were well used, maybe overused in some aspects, but overall, I approve of it. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty solid overall. Where'd you say it would rank? Like in the top?
I'd say probably the third or fourth best in the entire
Definitely
franchise. 100% top 5. Because I was a lot more impressed than I thought I'd be. I wasn't sure if I was going to love it, hate it. But overall, as a film, it's meh. 4 out of 10, maybe a 5. But
Probably 5.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But within the Saw...
Unless you're IGN. Or Tommy.
Within the Saw canon, like one of my favorites.
Is it canon?
And I think it was really refreshing take to see a concept like Saw be brought into the modern era like this. I think it was a strong... I think it just shows how endearing the concept really is to like have this new full like reimagining of the universe, and to really have it brought into a different light and to see it like evolve over time and become something new, but it still sticks to the roots. That's what like my main favorite thing about it. So
yeah, it was a good theater experience. Pretty solid little horror movie. Definitely interested in. There's a lot of good stuff hidden away in the film, and I'm definitely interested in what they do next.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, Chris Rock is involved.
I
don't know if the same directors come back. Might be interesting to see like maybe a new director, or maybe even see Chris Rock direct.
Yeah, just as long as it's someone who cares.
I'd almost like to see a Tobin Bell cameo, but like at this point, it's kind of fine.
Right, I'm okay with it. I mean, I love his performances were always the best part of the original Saw films, and I wholeheartedly believe that. He always elevated what he did.
And the new voice, I know a lot of people don't like it. I'm fine with it.
It's okay. The new like
a lot of the newer stuff they do, they still have the pig like murderers kind of.
I mean, at least they're trying, and like we said, there was definitely
they weren't afraid to like step out,
right?
Which is the best part.
There was definitely care put into it, which I think is important. If they go forward with this, I don't want to see like them trying to make money off of it, because especially considering the financial success of this one, that probably wouldn't be the goal anyway.
I mean, I think no matter how well it does, I think the studio is definitely proud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if for some reason this is the last one, it's definitely much better than Jigsaw.
Oh yeah, it's a huge step up from Jigsaw, and as long as they put care into it, I would love to see it continue, because it's kind of what the Saw franchise is. It's not really a one and done. So if they continue, I'd be happy with that. But if they leave it with this, I'd also be content, because I definitely approve of what they did.
Yeah. And like for some reason they were calling it a spin-off and sequel, and it's like it's basically just Saw 9.
Yeah. It's pretty much just the 9th Saw film. It is very clearly a Saw film. You can feel it throughout.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that...
out of 10. You said a 5. I'd probably give it a 5 as well.
Probably like a 5.
5.5 at best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think...
I'd recommend it.
I would recommend to a Saw fan for sure. Definitely horror fans, especially if you like gore. I recommend it. And, yeah. That's pretty much all I have to wrap up.
Yeah. And then we should be back next week. If we're not, it's just busy, but...
Yeah, we should be next week. I'm excited for next week's. I think it's going to be a bit more about anticipation than a true review. But, yeah, that does it for this week's episode of AmityCast.
Yep, that's probably about it. We'll see you next time. Anything else you want to say?
Peace.
The Precinct?
There's no one on the force I can trust.